Sometimes the quietest moments in your life are the ones that echo the loudest moments, where you felt a truth rising inside you, something you wanted to say, something you needed to say, but the words froze somewhere between your mind and your mouth. And instead of speaking, you swallowed that feeling, tucked it somewhere inside, and told yourself it wasn't the right time, or that someone else would say it, or that maybe it didn't matter as much as you thought. But later, when the moment passed, you felt that tiny ache, that small sharp regret that whispers, "Why didn't I say something?" If you're listening to this right now, there's a good chance you know exactly what that silence feels like. It's a silence that doesn't just fill a room, it fills you and it stays. It lingers in conversations with friends, in confrontations you avoided, in opportunities you didn't reach for, in relationships where you allowed too much or asked for too little. It's a silence shaped by fear, shaped by habit, shaped by the stories you've been carrying around all your life. And the most interesting thing is almost everyone believes they're the only one who struggles with this, the only one whose heartbeat speeds up before they speak, the only one whose throat tightens at the thought of being misunderstood, the only one who replays imaginary conversations in their head, practicing the courage they couldn't find in real life. But the truth is, this silence is human. It's woven into your psychology more deeply than you might realize. It starts early. It starts subtly. It starts in the small moments, long before you ever learn the language to describe it. Think back to when you were a child, when the world felt big, unpredictable, and full of people who seemed to know more than you. Maybe you were taught to be polite. Maybe you were told not to talk back. Maybe you were scolded when you expressed anger, or laughed at when you expressed fear, or dismissed when you expressed needs. Maybe the adults around you praised you most when you were quiet, behaved easy to handle. So you learned something important even if no one said it out loud. Silence keeps you safe. Silence keeps the peace. Silence keeps people happy. And once your mind learns something that protects you, even if it's based on inaccurate or outdated experiences, it doesn't let go easily. Your brain is designed to avoid danger, not pursue truth. And speaking up is dangerous, not physically maybe, but emotionally, socially, psychologically. It can feel like stepping into fire. The human brain processes social threats the same way it processes physical threats. When you imagine being judged, embarrassed, rejected, or misunderstood, your brain activates the same fear circuits designed to protect you from harm. Your heartbeat rises, your chest tightens, you hesitate, your mind fills with warnings. Don't say that, don't risk it, stay safe, stay quiet, and the silence wins again. Take a moment to think about the last time you wanted to say something but didn't. Maybe you wanted to tell someone their comment hurt you. Maybe you wanted to ask for help. Maybe you wanted to set a boundary. Maybe you wanted to stand up for someone else. Or maybe you just wanted to say no, but the word felt too heavy to lift. In that moment, you weren't weak, you weren't passive, you weren't foolish, you were protecting yourself, you were choosing silence over vulnerability, because vulnerability, real vulnerability, requires a sense of safety that many people never fully learned. There's a particular kind of emotional math the mind does before you speak. It asks, what do I risk by saying this? And then it asks, what do I risk by staying silent? And most of the time, silence feels like the safer gamble. But what you discover much later, sometimes years later, is that silence has its own cost, a cost that accumulates slowly, quietly, invisibly. You start to feel unseen, unheard, misunderstood. You start to become a quiet version of yourself, even in your closest relationships, even around people you trust. Your opinions shrink, your needs dim, Your boundaries soften, your desires gather dust. You begin to feel like a supporting character in your own life. You tell yourself you don't want to disappoint others. You don't want conflict. You don't want to make things awkward. You don't want to be too much or too emotional or too sensitive. So you choose silence to be easier to love, easier to manage, easier to accept. And people do love you, but they love the version of you. They think you are not the version you've been hiding. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who don't actually know you, not because they don't care, but because you never let them see the parts of you that matter most. And over time, that loneliness becomes heavier than the fear that created it. Many people believe they stay silent because they lack confidence, but confidence isn't the root. The real roots are older, deeper, woven through your experiences like threads: fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others, fear of not being enough, fear of hurting someone, fear of being misunderstood, fear of starting something you might not know how to finish. And then there's another layer, one most people don't even realize is shaping them. Your silence protects the relationships you are afraid to lose. Think about that. Think about how many things you've swallowed because you didn't want to upset someone you cared about. Think about how many boundaries you softened because you didn't want someone to think you were difficult. Think about how many times you downplayed your needs so no one would call you needy. The fear isn't speaking, the fear is losing connection. Humans are wired for attachment. Even as adults, a big part of your emotional world depends on whether you feel accepted, valued, included. Speaking up threatens that acceptance. Even if the threat is imaginary, your brain treats it as real. This is why you rehearse conversations in your head days before you plan to have them. This is why you overthink every possible reaction the other person might have. This is why you replay old arguments in your mind, rewriting them with the courage you wish you had at the time. It's your nervous system trying to calculate a safe path through a world that feels unpredictable. But here's the paradox. Every time you choose silence, the fear doesn't disappear, it grows. And the next time you want to speak, it becomes even harder. Imagine carrying a bag of unsaid words, every unexpressed emotion, every swallowed truth, every boundary you never voiced. At first it's light, barely noticeable. But over the years, that bag becomes heavy. It pulls at your shoulders. It slows you down. It makes you tired in ways you can't explain. Eventually, silence doesn't protect you anymore. It suffocates you. You start to feel disconnected from yourself. You lose touch with your instincts. Your intuition dims. Your internal voice becomes faint because you haven't listened to it in so long. And when you finally want to speak, when something inside you finally says enough, the words feel foreign, as if they no longer belong to you. This is why so many people break down over small things. The small thing isn't the problem. It's the final straw on top of years of silence. But here's the part. People forget speaking up doesn't have to be a loud, dramatic act. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's soft. Sometimes it's simply telling the truth without shrinking, without apologizing for your feelings, without minimizing yourself. The courage to speak begins the moment you start believing your voice deserves to exist. There's a moment in every life where you realize that silence isn't peace, it's self-abandonment, it's choosing comfort over growth, it's prioritizing short-term harmony over long-term connection. It's protecting everyone except yourself. And when that realization hits something inside, you shifts. You begin to see that speaking up isn't an act of aggression. It's an act of honesty. It's a way of letting people know who you really are. It's a way of protecting the relationships that matter, because authentic relationships can't survive on unspoken expectations and hidden resentments. Imagine a relationship where you never speak up. Everything looks calm on the surface, but beneath that surface is a quiet pressure, unexpressed frustrations, unmet needs, unresolved hurt. Eventually, the silence cracks the relationship from the inside, because love without honesty becomes performance. But imagine a relationship where you do speak, not perfectly, not fearlessly, not dramatically, just truthfully. In that relationship, people don't have to guess what you feel. You don't have to swallow resentment. You don't have to walk on emotional eggshells. There's room for growth, for understanding, for deeper connection. Speaking is not the opposite of love. Silence is not the same as peace. True peace is built on truth, and the truth is you are allowed to take up emotional space. You are allowed to say this hurt me. You are allowed to say I need this. You are allowed to say I disagree. You are allowed to say I'm not comfortable with that. You are allowed to say I deserve better. You are allowed to say no, and your world won't collapse. The people who truly care won't leave. The relationships worth keeping won't break, they'll strengthen. But this shift doesn't happen overnight. It begins with one small moment, one choice, one sentence you speak, even though your voice trembles. That's all it takes to begin rewiring the patterns that kept you quiet for so long. Your nervous system needs evidence. Evidence that you can express yourself and still be safe. Evidence that conflict doesn't destroy love. Evidence that honesty doesn't push people away. Evidence that your voice is not a threat. Every time you speak up even a little, you give your brain that evidence, and slowly your silence begins to loosen its grip. What once felt terrifying becomes tolerable. What once felt impossible becomes natural, and eventually you begin to trust yourself again. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you don't feel that ache anymore, the ache of all the things you didn't say. Imagine living a life where your relationships feel honest, alive, balanced. Imagine feeling understood because you finally let yourself be seen. Imagine feeling free. That version of you exists. That voice exists. It has always existed. It was never lost, just quiet, waiting for you to choose it. And maybe today you're listening to this because something inside you is ready to change. Maybe you're tired of being silent. Maybe you're tired of carrying the weight of unspoken things. Maybe you're ready to speak, not to fight, not to prove, not to win, but to finally honor the truth living inside you. Because your voice is not just sound, it's self-respect, it's self-connection, it's self-definition. It's you stepping out of the shadows of who you were told to be and into the light of who you really are. And if you're afraid, good fear means this matters. But don't confuse fear with inability. Just because something scares you doesn't mean you aren't capable of doing it. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is choosing truth even while fear stands in the doorway. And the beautiful thing is, every time you choose your voice over your fear, you become a little more yourself, a little more whole, a little more alive. Your silence shaped you, but it does not have to define you. And maybe, just maybe, the next time your heart tightens with something you want to say, you'll remember this moment, this feeling, this truth, and you'll let that truth rise. You'll let it breathe. You'll let it speak, because you deserve to be heard, and the world is quieter without your voice in it.